Dziękuję bardzo. I dobry wieczór. Thank you very much and good afternoon. The title is Language Competence, and so it is an irony that I have to read it because my first foreign language is German and my English is a self-training. So I apologize serdecznie po polsku, but as you know, we Italians, we all can do improvisation. This is the only skill we can say we have without any doubt. Thank you very much. So, no. Okay. No, now I will read, so sorry for the jokes. The paper aims at presenting and discussing the situation concerning the status of language testing and evaluation in Italy today. In particular, the paper refers to the Italian school context, from compulsory school to academic context, and discusses what happens in the field of teachers' training, whether they are teachers of Italian as foreign language or teachers of other foreign languages, or teachers of different subjects as mathematics or biology, etc. As we know, language assessment is or should be a cross-cutting issue which should concern not only language teachers. As it is to be pointed out, the resulting framework is that of a country where there is a distinct lack of a culture of evaluation and assessment, such as Davies, 1998, wrote, a country where the impact of language testing and assessment is generally negative. Our conclusion is that this is the reason. Our conclusion is that this is the reason why the language testing and evaluation activities are still perceived in Italy as another isolated step into the process of learning and teaching, a danger tool for students' achievement and parental relationship, a difficult requirement for all involved in educational context, at first for teachers. In order to understand what is happening today in the field of language testing and assessment in Italy, it is necessary to provide some background information regarding context sectors of the Italian society, which are very different from each other. Firstly, the Italian society and its languages. The Italian as a language spoken by Italians is a fairly recent phenomenon, which some scholars, especially De Mauro, 1963, placed around the late 60s. In recent years, the so-called Italianization of the country was certainly driven by the advent of television and the increase of schooling, and not, as happened in other countries, by an explicit top-down language policy. In any case, the Italian as a language spoken by the majority of Italians is a new phenomenon which coexists with the dialects, the languages of the ancient linguistic minorities, and a large number of regional linguistic varieties. The plurilingual and multilingual repertoire is far to represent a resource, but is still the main reason of a widespread linguistic insecurity. Such language insecurity has grown recently following the arrival of a massive number of foreign citizens to Italy. The presence of foreigners in Italy has exponentially increased over the last 15 years. New languages, new cultures came into contact, and the reaction of a linguistic environment dominated by linguistic insecurity was only the fear of diversity. The new languages, the so-called immigrant languages, are not only undervalued and not improved, but even not recognized, almost negated in their identity, such as written by Bagna, Machetti, Vedovelli, 2004. Data from the latest Italian census show that 5% of Italians speak other languages, but we don't know what those other languages are. Certainly, this situation has had a negative impact on the perception of the importance to learn a foreign language and on the awareness of the importance to be plurilingual as well. A good example of this feeling could be the distinct disadvantage of Italy compared to all other European countries in foreign language skills proficiency of its citizens, and in the access to the system of foreign language assessment. The number of proficiency exams in a foreign language is very low in Italy. The school context. The emergence of different languages and cultures spoken by foreign pupils, born and grown up abroad, born in Italy by foreign parents, children of mixed couples, etc., a time around 8% of the school population, has created new challenges for the teachers, such as teaching Italian language to non-native students and assessing their language proficiency as well. These needs have dramatically grown up because most of the Italian teachers, language teachers, and the other teachers as well, have no training in language teaching as teachers of a foreign language. First of all, teachers of English. They know, and not always at a proficiency level, the language, but they have little or no training on how to teach language. Still, with the reference to the school's context, it could be interesting to underline that the only foreign language taught is basically English, with a very limited number of hours in primary school. The teaching time expands slightly for higher school levels. The presence of and teaching of other European languages is limited to French, German, and Spanish. These languages are taught in some of the middle schools and some of the high schools. The impact of the foreign language proficiency exams like Cambridge, ESOL, the French DELF and DALF in schools is negative in many cases. For example, many teachers think that they have to train students to pass the test. The student's family perceive these exams as a compulsory step and an added economic burden. Students consider them as a waste of time. Compulsory school curricula pay little or no attention to the issues of evaluation and assessment of language skills. More generally, any activity in this field is under the power of the educational psychology and is mainly carried out in an impressionistic and highly subjective way. Since 2007, the Ministry of Education has entrusted the INVALSI, the National Institute for Evaluation, the project of an external evaluation of students' learning by means of standardized objective tests on the Italian language and on mathematics. These tests are administered to both Italian students and foreign students, with very critical marks for foreign students. The impact of such a system, both on schools and on the society, is essentially negative. Another very critical point is represented by the field of Italian language proficiency exams. Since 1993, there have been 4 different certification tests of Italian as foreign language in Italy, whose impact in the Italian context is quite weak and negative. One example is the test for adult migrants living in Italy for work. These citizens must show skills in the Italian language at A2 level by passing a test. Language training for migrants is not compulsory, and the test is a barrier which each migrant has to pass, with the consequences which we can imagine. As we suggested, this situation is strictly linked to a distinct lack of a culture of language testing and assessment in Italy. The teachers, and not just language teachers, are the first to suffer the consequences of such a situation. A research started in 2004 and still in progress points out how poor the teacher's knowledge and competence on language testing and assessment are. This research uses questionnaires and interviews. Teachers involved are about 500 from primary schools to high schools. The data show that the only tools known by the teachers are subjective tests, objective tests, multiple choice tests, task-based tests, whereas concepts such as validity, reliability, practicality, feasibility, etc. are not known. What are the reasons of such lack? In addition to the previous issues, there are certainly other issues related more closely to the teachers. We will try to make a list. First, a probable cause could be that what a researcher, professor of educational linguistics, is expected to do in an academic context, therefore also strictly related to teachers' training. Her profile, which indicates what a good researcher professor should know, research and teach, to the students and teachers as well, does not include any reference to the language testing and assessment. This includes studies regarding teaching both the mother language as well as other spoken languages, with specific attention to theoretical aspects, even as regards the problem of translation and languages for special purpose, with particular reference to the teaching of modern languages and teaching techniques for linguistic knowledge transfer. So you read also. Second, as a consequence of the first point, teachers' training normally delivered by university does not include any reference to the language testing and assessment. Only in 2014, the pre-service training provided a specific training on teaching methodologies and strategies, but there is no reference to language testing and assessment. At the academic level, there are only 2 postgraduate schools which deal with the professional development of language assessment, one at the University for Foreigners of Perugia, the other at the University for Foreigners of Siena. No university in Italy offers a PhD program in this field. The situation does not get better as we look at the in-service training, which generally ignores these issues. The very few training courses on language testing and assessment are due to isolated projects to which teachers are involved as volunteers. In general, in the educational context, the language testing and assessment is seen as an uncomfortable subject, difficult, tedious, and just a tool to control teachers' work and punish students, instead of a tool for helping to monitor them and improve the teaching process. Another issue that does not certainly contribute to any change of the situation is related to scientific publications, books, papers in scientific journals, etc., on language testing and assessment. Definitely, there are no publications in Italian, which, with only some exceptions. Who has interest in language testing and assessment is therefore pushed to look at international bibliography, as we know mainly focused on the testing and assessment of English as foreign language. Such bibliography is an interesting help, but the risk is that content and parameters developed specifically for assessing English are automatically applied to assessing Italian, as in the case of the teaching Italian as foreign language. We know that this situation is not very different from that of other European countries, but now in Italy, perhaps more than elsewhere, the need of a change is really urgent. Who asks for this change? Primarily the students, to be evaluated fairly and with valid and reliable tools. High school students and university students are asking for a transparent and fair assessment. It would be desirable that this awareness began to emerge among younger students, for example, by providing them an understandable assessment scale, a little more understandable than that which, for example, comes to a pupil who passes the first grade. Secondarily, many teachers are asking for a change. Many teachers oppose to a system of external evaluation, but have not yet acquired, despite the previous experience, the tools to overcome the limits of a subjective or impressionistic evaluation. We mean the same tools that the teachers themselves could use to criticize an external evaluation system. Teachers ask for a training starting to open up the study of language assessment to applied linguistics, rather than keeping it within the narrow confines of educational psychology. In this way, the teacher training will be able to make language teachers appreciate the idea that the language test is not in itself the sole objective of language learning and teaching professional language assessment training courses, open to the new methodologies, FLA, CBLA, pair assessments, etc. So this is conclusion. The most important things are usually the short ones. So like here. Families ask for a change. Not unlike other European countries, and more than in the past, investing in the education of their children has become an actual investment in Italy. All the families have therefore the right to claim for a fair and accountable evaluation system, because the impact of this process is linked not only to the future of their children, but also and most immediately to the same family. Finally, if a change is asked by the students, their families, teachers, it is obvious that the society itself cannot resist to a change. It is true that any testing, and therefore also the language testing, has always been a tool to guarantee security. Exempli gratia, if you take a language test that demonstrates that you know my language, I have got the guarantee that you respect the rules and it will not harm me or my family. But it is also true that a bad evaluation and/or testing misuse are the main causes of the decline of a society, one of the main symptoms of its crisis. Can Italy afford even this kind of decline? Dziękuję bardzo.